those that know me best know that although I have been a full-time musician for most of my life, I still derive income from it. I still am involved in it in a lot of ways. I sort of moved away from it in 2004 when I decided to work during the day, which was probably the greatest decision I ever made in my life, because what once felt like a jail sentence to sit somewhere 9 to 5 became another interest and another avenue to explore that I was previously untapped. So with this job that I had, I ended up, it didn't pay very much, but it offered college tuition. So 4 years into the job, I started going back to school, got my associate's degree, continued on, got my bachelor's degree. 2008 to 2017 long journey. So now, throughout all this time, I was teaching privately, teaching in some different schools and stuff like that. And the parents of my students would often come up to me and say, "Oh, my son or my daughter can't live without music in his or her life, and she wants to pursue it full time." And my heart sank a little bit. I'd have to admit that when I would always hear that, because whether you're going to agree with my advice on young musicians and what their career path should be, anybody that's my age that's been in this game since 1980 has to admit it's changed for the worse, and it's very difficult to make a living. I don't want to go into all the different reasons why, because we could talk forever about it. But anyway, when I got out of school, my idea was, it had nothing to do with music. It was to learn something new. I wanted to teach. I wanted to teach at a charter school in Newark. That was the plan. And so I went to many of my friends who were educators for the last 30 years. And here's the funny thing. When I went to them and told them about my plan to change the world one boy or girl at a time, they had the same look in their eyes as I had when I was approached by the parents of my students that wanted to go into the music business. So, in other words, these educators would say to me, "Look, it's a great thing that you went back to school and you feel you want to make these changes, and it's all positive." But the reality is, with the changes in the education system, the PARCC tests and all these different things, he said teaching is not what it used to be. And as a matter of fact, we're retiring early because of all of this. We don't want to be a part of it. So in other words, what they learned in 30 years, I could never understand just walking out of school like some idealistic guy. And in turn, the same thing could be said for the young 17-year-old students that I've had. And I'm trying not to be negative, but I'm trying to also be realistic, which really needs to happen. We need more of that these days. But anyway, so here we're going to get down to what's my advice for any young person that wants to get into the music business. Well, my advice is they should concentrate on something else other than the music business to derive sustenance from, to make a living. I know that advice sounds like maybe something like my father would say, or your father or mom, but guess what? Growing up, my father never told me that. He didn't tell me anything, as a matter of fact. He gave really no guidance. And he was a musician. He wanted me to be one, but he didn't really tell me what I should do. So here's what I suggest if you're contemplating a career in the music business. And again, this advice is, take it with a grain of salt. It's just my opinion. You'll get lots of people my age that'll have different opinions. But my opinion is to go to college and study something other than music, something that's lucrative in this new global world that we live in. Now, we often hear about all this stuff about inequality, income inequality, and all this crap. But as Thomas Sowell said, when you want to start to look at the root causes of inequality, sometimes the best place to start is by looking in the mirror. So So it's not for me to tell you what's going to be lucrative in the global market. I would say anything in the STEM fields, anything in sciences. Uh, I personally, if I can only go back to be a doctor, that's what I would like to do. But I think it's a little too late. I'm not that ambitious. But so this is the thing. So go back to school, study something like that, and don't tell me, my fellow musician friends, that it has to be all or nothing. If you dedicate yourself, if you put the time in, if you organize your life and make some sacrifices, you could do it all. You could study whatever demanding field it is and still make a lot of headway on your instrument. You could study privately with a top instructor in your area. You could wake up early or stay up late and get that hour or two of practice in every single day and do everything, not just one or the other, not just play the bass or go back to school it doesn't have to be, you can't do it all. You can. That's my opinion. All right, so now if you don't want to study electrical engineering at the college level, then I would say study music, but make sure that when you walk out of those institutions, that you're prepared to teach at any level as a certified teacher. Take the praxis tests. Try to get into a program that when you leave the college, you're ready to teach. You're already doing the student teaching while you're a student, and so those are the two things for me. Either I prefer going to college and studying something else, studying accounting, studying anything else, and still doing music at the same time on your own, studying privately, learning on your own. But then the second idea is studying music, but not composition or you need to study education. You need to teach, even though you can make an argument that music programs are dwindling and all of that. You'll still be a music teacher if you really want it bad enough. You still want to have music in your life. Now, you don't necessarily also have to go to college too. Here's another idea. How about learning how to do something other than music, like fix a car, or become a plumber, become a air conditioning or refrigerator person, something like that. The things that I can't do, like I'll write you a 100-page essay about the history of Marxism, but I can't put a nail in a wall, right? So, all right. So those are my ideas. I'm saying that you should learn something to do, a skill that you can make a living at and play music. And then you should go to college, study education, or study something other than music. The whole idea of, oh, you're selling out if you get a day job. Don't listen to anybody that says stuff like that. I've been hearing that my whole life. I listened to people like that, and actually impacted me very negatively, because my life could have took shape the way it did ultimately a lot earlier than it did. So I remember my friend Freddie Covino, the late Freddie Carr, like on my earliest gigs, and I was in 1980, I was like 18 years old. He'd been around, and he would say, "Hey Tony, it's not too late to take the post office test." And we used to laugh, but he was semi-serious about that, knowing what he knew back then about the music business. That was 1980, and that was like the heyday of like making money, doing like around town gigs. Now in 2020, it's brutal out there. It's not like Rodney Dangerfield, but I'm just being realistic. Remember, reality is not negativity. Despite how it might sound, that my career didn't turn out the way it is, my career has failed. You could skew it any way you want, but I'm just being real, being realistic, telling you things that, ways to look at it. You could listen to what I say, and you could take my advice, or you could not. But if you end up turning 58 years old, and you have no money, you're getting kicked out of your place, and you're waiting for a politician to be elected to answer all your problems, I think you'll be very disappointed in the way your life turns out. So that's my 10-minute lesson. Couldn't adhere to the 2 minutes for Tom Semioli, but that's what can you do?